So as an example, I think you've mentioned this also, where we had an idea that the universe or the sun revolved around the Earth. And then that changed to, well, the Earth revolves around the sun, but the solar system is a center. And then, no, that's a part of a galaxy. And no, that's part of a universe. And no, that's part of a multiverse. And each one of those changes your view of the role of humans in existence, in reality. So the common conception has been, well, evolution showed us that we came here from tadpoles and frogs and monkeys. And so we're not that different. We're not that special. We're just sort of improvements on them. And now with this expanded view of the universe, we see that the universe is much, much larger. And humans are like this tiny little bacteria or scum that just populate this backwards little planet. And so our epistemology about humans and their role in the universe has changed as our understanding of the physics has changed. But surprisingly, you've taken that back in the opposite direction. You've said, well, actually, this is the only general intelligence that we know of, and knowledge is this very powerful thing. So humans do have a very outsized role to play. And you had a great talk that I think was titled something like Chemical Scum That Dream of Distant Quasars. And so could you please talk a little bit about that? What is the role of humans as you understand it in the theory of everything with what we know today? And how is it different and special?
What we know of the universe at the moment is the universe in the past. Everything we see is in the past, and the deeper we look into the universe, the deeper into the past we look. And if the universe is going to last a long time, it may last an infinite time, or the theories that say it's going to last a finite time, that time is very, very large. And in either case, what we see of the universe is very, very untypical, accordingly. The way I nowadays put this is that in the past, there's been a kind of rule of thumb in the universe, which I call the hierarchy rule, which is that massive energetic things strongly affect less massive, less energetic things, but not vice versa. So if a comet strikes the sun, then the comet is completely destroyed, but the sun hardly notices. And if it weren't for this rule, if it weren't for this hierarchy rule, physics would be much, much more difficult, because we then couldn't understand a star unless we knew what its planets were doing, and we couldn't understand what its planets were doing unless we also understood what meteors hit the planet and so on. So the fact that big things could be affected by small things, then they could also be affected by small details of themselves. And we couldn't understand much at all without knowing lots of detail. In reality, we could understand a lot about astronomy without even knowing that many of the things out there even exist. And it's the same with small things. We can understand why crystals, this is a very nice part of the history of science, by the way. You look at a crystal and you see that the faces are at certain angles to each other. How do you explain those angles? Well, it's with the atomic theory. They explained that the different ways that atoms can be stacked before anyone had ever seen an atom or knew what the atoms were. So there's a rule of thumb, the hierarchy rule, that large things are not affected by small things. It's not a law of nature. It is an accidental feature of the very early universe. That is to say, the universe kind of up to now. But the hierarchy rule has already been broken 4 billion years ago by the emergence of life. The emergence of life was really an event that happened in a single molecule. Never mind the emergence of life, because the thing that really violated the hierarchy rule was the emergence of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a mutation of a gene for an earlier type of photosynthesis that did not produce oxygen and was less efficient. But the oxygen-producing photosynthesis was a mutation. That mutation happened in one molecule, one DNA molecule. And that molecule went on to change the entire surface of the Earth. The entire atmosphere was converted from carbon dioxide to oxygen, and all the substances on the surface of the Earth were converted as well, some of them into minerals, all the iron ore on the surface of the planet is thought to have been created by the oxygen in the atmosphere interacting with other materials on the surface of the Earth. So this one molecule has utterly transformed the whole surface of the planet, which is something like 10 to the 40 times its mass. So somebody looking at the Earth from the other side of the galaxy and seeing that oxygen form could know that the hierarchy rule has been violated on Earth. That's sort of an amazing amount of violation, but that's nothing compared with what people can do, with what explanatory creativity can do, because biological evolution is severely limited in its ability to create knowledge. It can only create knowledge where every step, every slight change to the existing knowledge is itself an improvement, or at least not a disadvantage. This limits what biological evolution can do. If you think about, say, humans inventing fire, sorry, it wasn't invented by humans, it was invented by some precursor species who were also people. So those people invented fire, and it was terribly useful. It would have been useful to many other species as well, but they never evolved it, probably because there was no sequence of steps, each of which was advantageous. Whereas a human with creative imagination can see, let's say, a burning branch left over from a forest fire or something like that, and can think, it's getting late. They've been on a hunting trip. We might not get home before it gets dark, which would be terrible, life-threatening. But maybe if we take that branch, it will light our way home. Now, that hunter can have that thought and can go and reach for the branch because he can creatively imagine that he will survive and benefit from it. Evolution can't creatively imagine. All the changes it makes are before the natural selection, which makes the genes better. So it's the other way around. It's the other way around for people. Everything is the other way around for people. So my other favorite example is the aliens who are watching us would see, is that they would eventually see an asteroid heading towards the Earth and then being deflected. And they would know that not only does that violate the hierarchy rule, but it couldn't be done by evolution, which also violates the hierarchy rule, but people violate it by an enormous factor more. So as I said I think it was in a TED talk, that once humans have reached a factor of 10 to the 40 of violating the hierarchy rule, we will be controlling the galaxy. And if you take that a bit further, that means that astrophysics will become more and more the history of what people do. At the moment, when we look at an astronomical event, we don't take into account what people do. But by the time we've reached that factor of 10 to the 40, you won't be able to tell what the star will do unless you know something about what people will do.
So in this model, humans become central to the universe. They're not a sideshow.
Yeah, people, knowledge, these things all go along together.